What if everything you learned about the Civil War is a half-truth, or worse, a lie? Beneath the polished statues and textbook simplifications lies a war steeped in contradictions that defy easy moralizing. This wasn't just North versus South or freedom versus slavery. It was a clash of hypocrisies where both sides upheld systemic racism, where emancipation came with loopholes, and where soldiers died for economies they didn't control. Picture this: a Union president who openly opposed racial equality, Confederate states that outlawed slave imports, Native nations forced to choose between two genocidal powers, a draft system that outworked the Norths, and a war so brutal its death toll surpassed every other U.S. conflict combined, yet its darkest truths remain buried. We're dissecting 10 shocking Civil War facts that rewrite the narrative. Why did Lincoln wait 3 years to free enslaved people and let loyal states keep slavery? How did Northern factories profit from Southern cotton? Why did Native Americans fight for the Confederacy? And what twisted irony turned Union troops into tools of frontier genocide? This isn't your history teacher's Civil War. Strap in for a journey through forbidden documents, blood-soaked battlefields, and political betrayals that shaped America's soul. By the end, you'll question everything you thought you knew and wonder why these stories were silenced. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. If the Civil War was truly about keeping and spreading slavery, why did it take 3 years for the Emancipation Proclamation to be announced? What would have happened if the war had ended earlier? The Emancipation Proclamation only freed enslaved people in states that had rebelled, allowing Union-loyal states like Kentucky, Delaware, and West Virginia to keep slavery while still sending troops to fight the Confederacy. The conflict began primarily as a test of whether 11 Southern states could successfully form a separate nation. 4 of those states explicitly cited white supremacy in their official secession documents. However, Abraham Lincoln, the U.S. President, Fact 3, held racist beliefs. He stated, "I do not and never have supported social or political equality between white and black people. I oppose letting black people vote, serve on juries, hold office, or marry white people. There's a physical difference between races that I believe will always stop them from living as equals." Lincoln also said, "I won't interfere with slavery where it already exists. I don't have the legal right or interest to do so." He argued that our government was created for people of the same background, claiming black and white coexistence endangered the nation. He warned that mixed-race children could weaken white supremacy. In 1860, America was largely white. As Lincoln's own words show, there was no clear division where one side wasn't racist and the other was, even if that's uncomfortable to admit today. Non-white people were denied citizenship, voting rights, and political office in both the North and South. If the South had stayed in the Union, war might have been avoided, since the North wasn't trying to abolish slavery. Northern businesses profited from cotton taxes and depended on Southern cotton for factories. Most Northern whites in the 1860s wouldn't risk their lives fighting for people they considered inferior. Union soldiers often shared the same racist attitudes as Southern troops. Some slave states even contributed soldiers to the Union Army. For the first 3 years, slavery was a secondary issue. The main goal was stopping Southern independence. The war, despite its bravery on both sides, was ultimately about whether the South could break away. For Fact 5, the Civil War was the deadliest in U.S. history, with over 620,000 deaths, more than all other American wars combined. The typical Confederate soldier was a white Southern man aged 15 to 60. Records show 89% of these soldiers owned no slaves, and 75% of all Southerners didn't either. Still, slavery was key to the South's economy, and enslaved people were forced to support the Army through physical labor. Many Native Americans supported the Confederacy. The last Confederate general to surrender was Cherokee leader Stand Watie. Other Native officers included Creek leader Daniel McIntosh. While the Union is praised for ending slavery, it also carried out genocide against Native Americans, with widespread killings and atrocities on the frontier. Notably, some of the first black soldiers, Buffalo Soldiers, assisted in these campaigns, filling gaps in Union troop numbers. Union generals like Custer later led massacres against Native communities, including scalping. Though the Confederacy is often compared to Nazi Germany, it was the Union that deployed a powerful government to invade territories and commit genocide. Similarities exist between the U.S. Army's westward expansion under Manifest Destiny and Nazi Germany's invasions, both involving mass killings. After broken treaties and stolen land by the U.S. government, many Cherokee and other Native groups allied with the Confederacy, seeing Southern independence as a chance for freedom. They became high-ranking officers and fought fiercely until the Confederacy's collapse. The Confederacy is often labeled as slavery's defender, but their constitution prohibited bringing in new enslaved people, meaning no Confederate flag ever flew over ships transporting enslaved Africans. It also permitted new states or territories to join the Confederacy as free areas that banned slavery entirely, showing their stance was more nuanced than most assume. Abraham Lincoln wasn't on Southern ballots, but still became president, alarming Southerners who felt their rights and political power were slipping away. The North's larger population and waves of immigrants deepened cultural divides. The South relied on farming and family ties to the land, lacking the North's factories and crowded cities. Growing arguments over slavery, taxes, and states' rights made Southerners question leaving the Union. Most Southerners were descendants of early British settlers. While often labeled racist traitors, Confederates saw themselves as continuing America's fight for freedom. For example, Patrick Henry's grandson, who famously said, "Give me liberty or give me death," became a Confederate officer. Robert Tyler Jones, grandson of a U.S. president, carried the Confederate flag at Gettysburg under heavy fire. Confederate General Lewis Armistead, whose uncle defended the flag that inspired the national anthem, fought his close friend, Union General Winfield Hancock, at Gettysburg. Robert E. Lee, whose father fought alongside George Washington, led Confederate forces. Past examples like Vermont and Texas, leaving and rejoining the Union, made secession seem legal. After Lincoln's election, South Carolina voted to secede, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Most federal forts were handed over peacefully, except Fort Sumter in Charleston. Confederates demanded its surrender, but Lincoln sent supply ships. Southern troops bombarded the fort, leading Lincoln to call 75,000 volunteers to invade the South. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, the right to a fair trial, jailed Maryland's leaders to stop secession, and blockaded Southern ports. Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee then joined the Confederacy, refusing to let Union troops attack fellow Southern states. Confederate President Jefferson Davis declared, "All we ask is to be let alone." The war began as a clash over self-rule. Southerners saw themselves as patriots like their revolutionary ancestors, while Lincoln's actions, jailing dissenters, seizing guns, and invading states, mirrored British oppression colonists once rebelled against. Union soldiers clashed with civilians, echoing the Boston Massacre. By 1861, the stage was set for America's bloodiest conflict, rooted in competing visions of liberty and government power. The Confederate Army was built from scratch, much like the American forces during the Revolution. Young volunteers rushed to enlist, inspired by pride and the belief they were creating a fairer nation. They argued that governments only rule with the people's consent, a principle inherited from the Revolutionary era. Around 200,000 soldiers joined in the war's early months. Regiments were organized locally, led by wealthy or educated officers. Early on, soldiers even voted for their own sergeants and lieutenants. The Confederacy gained an edge with experienced former U.S. Army leaders like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and Jeb Stuart, all West Point graduates who resigned to fight for the South out of loyalty. Union generals often wasted lives in poorly planned attacks, while Confederates defended strategically. At the Battle of Fredericksburg in 1862, Union forces suffered 13,353 casualties compared to the Confederates' 4,576. First Bull Run in 1861 saw 2,950 Union losses versus 1,750 Confederate. The Wilderness in 1864 had 18,400 Union casualties to 11,400 Confederate. Spotsylvania Courthouse in 1864 saw 18,000 Union to 12,000 Confederate, and Cold Harbor in 1864 resulted in 13,000 Union casualties against just 2,500 Confederate. Despite ragged uniforms and starvation, Confederate troops fought fiercely. A woman who saw the Army of Northern Virginia in 1862 described their gaunt, hollow-eyed appearance, marveling that they could march or fight at all. Yet these soldiers halted Union advances at Antietam and inflicted heavy losses at Cold Harbor, Spotsylvania, and the Wilderness. Their resilience contrasted sharply with their worn-out appearance. The Union's costly tactics, like General Burnside's disastrous charge at Fredericksburg, where troops were slaughtered attacking Confederates behind a stone wall, highlighted the Confederates' defensive skill. Meanwhile, leaders like Lee and Jackson used terrain and speed to outmaneuver larger Union armies. Though outnumbered and under-resourced, the Confederacy held out for 4 years, fueled by soldiers who saw themselves as defending their homes and rights, much like their ancestors in 1776. Facing a manpower shortage, the Confederacy introduced a draft in 1862. Their system worked better than the North's. All white men aged 18 to 35 had to serve, and hiring substitutes was banned. Many older or younger men still volunteered. Most Confederate soldiers were farmers. Unlike Union troops, few were immigrants. Southern troops fought with more passion than practical Northerners. Their famous rebel yell terrified even battle-hardened Union soldiers. Confederates felt deeply committed, believing they defended their homes, families, and way of life. General Lee captured this spirit in 1864. If we win, we gain everything. If we lose everything. As defeat neared, religious revivals swept Confederate camps, with soldiers praying and singing hymns. But they couldn't match Union resources. For every Northerner killed, another arrived with fresh gear. Union armies burned Southern cities like Atlanta and Richmond, while desperate Confederates fought harder, causing heavy Union losses. At the war's end, Union commanders saluted Confederate bravery. For example, the 45th North Carolina started with 2,597 men and ended with just 88 soldiers and 7 officers. Such losses were common after 4 years of non-stop fighting. Jefferson Davis vowed, "This war won't end until our generation is dead or you recognize our right to govern ourselves. We fight for independence, not slavery. Independence or extinction." History isn't settled. It's debated. Why did 620,000 die for an economy most never owned? Why did both sides uphold racism while claiming moral high ground? Drop your hottest take below. Was Lincoln's delay cowardice or strategy? Should the Union's native massacres cancel its hero label? This war's ghosts still haunt us.